Well, the numbers, they're hard to comprehend this morning, but remember, these are people with families and stories. The coronavirus death toll in the United States is nearing 100,000 people. President Trump has not acknowledged that sobering reality. Instead, he spent the holiday weekend tweeting insults in between two rounds of golf. CNN's Joe Johns, live at the White House with more. And Joe, this seems to be, frankly, part of the president's message here to some degree, deliberately playing down the outbreak while going back to normal, or attempting to.
That's true, Jim. Good morning from Washington. An unusually sad holiday weekend here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, as the U.S. approaches a deadly milestone in the coronavirus pandemic. The president, though, spent most of his weekend, as you said, either tweeting on his phone or out on the links playing golf. President Trump spending much of the holiday weekend doing two things, golfing and tweeting. Sunday, protesters gathered outside his course in Virginia, criticizing him for golfing while Americans are still grappling with the pandemic. One sign declaring, "I care, do you?" This visit marked the 358th the president has made to one of his properties and the 266th trip he's made to one of his golf clubs since taking office. President Trump also reigniting his feud with former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, calling on him to drop out of the Alabama Republican Senate primary.
Jeff Sessions was a disaster as Attorney General. Should have never been Attorney General. He's not qualified. He's not mentally qualified to be Attorney General. He was the biggest problem.
The back and forth continuing throughout the weekend, with the president again criticizing Sessions for recusing himself from the Russia investigation. But Sessions firing back, "I did my duty, and you're damn fortunate I did." Meantime, the president defending his decision to golf, tweeting it was the first time he had played in almost 3 months. The president further took the opportunity to attack former President Obama and former Vice President Biden for frequently vacationing and relaxing while in office, even renewing his attack on Obama for, quote, always playing golf, a line of attack then candidate Trump often made against his predecessor.
It was reported today, played 250 rounds of golf. Everything's executive order because he doesn't have enough time because he's playing so much golf. I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf.
Trump even criticized Obama for golfing at the height of the Ebola response in 2014. That public health crisis saw 4 diagnosed cases in the United States. But as the U.S. death toll from coronavirus approaches 100,000, noticeably missing from the president's tweet storm, any mention of the Americans who have died. Instead, tweeting positively about the nation's response, writing, "Cases, numbers, and deaths are going down all over the country." And that last tweet is misleading. 10 states, according to our count, have seen decreases over the last week, but 18 states have seen increases. Today, the president is expected to visit Fort McHenry in Baltimore. That, of course, is a place where local officials have said they are concerned about the president's visit because they say it sends the wrong message. The president is also expected to go to the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington Cemetery to lay a wreath.
Joe,
Allison, back
thank
to
you very much for all of that. Joining us now is CNN senior political analyst John Avlon. John, great to see you. There are a few interesting things about the president choosing to play golf yesterday, and one is that over the past week, he's been very interested in churches. He's been very interested in churches reopening. He's encouraged them to do so, even against the advice of medical experts. But then yesterday, he didn't go to church. He played golf. So how do we process that?
Well, it's just more of the do as I say, not as I do presidency. But I think it shows how he's willing to use religion as a political weapon, but not walk the walk. And that's because he's never particularly been a person of faith, even though he's very popular among evangelicals. But I do think as America marches towards that grim milestone of 100,000, to be golfing, to be tweeting, to never mention the victims, he's raging because his ability to distract doesn't work. He seems small against the scale of the crisis we face. But that's a very stark reminder of how disconnected and apparently callous the president can be.
John Avlon, everything is political with this president, particularly a few months from an election. Does he calculate a political benefit to doing what he's doing here?
The president is all impulse. He is no self-control. So while the president has a certain gut political cunning that has proven incredibly effective, particularly in marshaling his base, you've got to admire, and historians will, his ability to capture the nomination out of nowhere. He has never been about strategy. He has always been about impulse. That has served him well up to a point, but it absolutely is a misfit for leading a nation during a pandemic. And that's what's been revealed, is how often the emperor is simply not wearing clothes. He's making accusations, and it doesn't fit anything resembling a commander-in-chief. Anyone who's trying to unite the nation, that's because this is really the first president in our history who has no impulse or apparent desire to unite the nation. He likes to divide, he likes to attack, makes him seem petty and small.
This squabble has gone public that he's having now with former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So for a long time, he was just insulting Jeff Sessions, and Jeff Sessions was taking it. And now Jeff Sessions seems to be less inclined to just sit silently, and it's been very interesting to watch. First of all, President Trump is saying that he was a horrible attorney general, should never have been chosen, wasn't qualified. He chose him.
Who would have chosen him for that, Allison? I don't know. That's so weird.
I mean, he's the person who picked him. I'm not sure who President Trump thinks how Jeff Sessions got there. But Jeff Sessions tweeted back this weekend. He said, "You and I fight for the same agenda." And he's talking about Tuberville, who's Jeff Sessions' opponent in this upcoming Senate race, is so weak he won't debate me in 2 weeks for Alabama. Alabama will vote for you this fall. But Alabama will not take orders from Washington on who to send to the Senate. So what do you think Jeff Sessions' chances are here going against the president?
Look, I think Jeff Sessions is finally perhaps learning the right lesson of Donald Trump's rise, which is that people respect strength. For so long, he's been walking, basically cowering like a puppy trying to avoid a newspaper, as the president insults him at every step and really emasculates him in the eyes of the Republican primary voters. Jeff Sessions realizing that Donald Trump's very popular in Alabama, but he was the longtime 20-year senator. But I think it's a larger cautionary tale as well. There's the first senator who endorsed Donald Trump when no one else would go near him. And this is how he's repaid. That's because loyalty is a one-way street with Donald Trump. Jeff Sessions has learned it. He's still trying to hug the agenda, but for the first time he's fighting back. That's probably a smart impulse. People respect strength, not weakness.
John, there's clearly impatience with the lockdowns in many states across the country, some of which you're seeing play out in those videos we've been airing here as people kind of, freed from the cage, go out and violate many of the best health recommendations here. Yeah. On the politics of this, and given the very real, though, economic damage, does the president potentially have something right in terms of throwing his lot in? And when I say right, not in terms of health advice, in terms of the politics here, throwing his lot in with the impatient in this country and saying, now, enough of listening to the doctors, go out and do what you want to do.
Yeah, you never want to say he has it right by saying, let's ignore science and medicine. Although that certainly is his impulse. Look, we're watching the president try to pull off an incredible magic trick, which is to campaign as an incumbent president of the United States as the outsider. That is consistent with his self-conception. It's consistent with his base. But rarely, and I wrote a book called Wingnuts 10 years ago about extremism in American politics. Rarely have we seen anything as surreal and self-defeatingly stupid as people protesting against health experts and medicine in the middle of a pandemic when they're the ones who are going to suffer. So the president's, again, he plays base politics incredibly well.